Tom Herman is still the head coach of Texas. Texas is playing Kansas Saturday. They're favored by over 4 touchdowns. They're probably going to win. They're probably going to finish the year 8-3. What is the latest with Tom Herman here? Well, it seems as though 95% of you have moved on from the idea of Urban Meyer being the future head coach at Texas. Now, I do want to reiterate for those of you who, in retrospect, are saying, "Oh, there was never a shot of this happening." I think that's wrong. What I do believe is it was a long shot, and I do believe Urban Meyer had like 15 boxes that needed to be checked, and Texas checked as many of them as they could. I think there are some things that were out of Texas's control that Urban Meyer was going to have, and it's much more nuanced stuff, but it wasn't a money deal, like it wasn't a resources deal, a promise for facilities. I don't think it was any of that. I think there were some things on Urban Meyer's side that he would have wanted to secure if he were to ever even venture down that road, and I don't think he was going to get them. And it's nothing Texas could really do. So the question is still, is anyone else worth the $25 million buyout? And I want you to, again, theme tonight, consider how ludicrous it is that we're throwing around that kind of number. On what planet, in what era, does Tom Herman ever have any business walking around with a $25 million buyout? Where was he ever going? At any point. This was after the Sugar Bowl when they beat Georgia. That's when it happened. Much to the chagrin of a lot of people down there who were overruled. You throw it out there just because you have it. And just cause, you don't ever think it's going to be necessary anyway because, hey, this guy just won the Sugar Bowl. So if anything, it makes you feel good. Hey, we're married to this guy. Yeah, you sure are. Well, you're chained to him. I wouldn't say married. You're chained to him now. Admins versus agents, I'll say it again, it's the most lopsided rivalry in all of sports, not just college, all of sports. So Texas, like I said, probably about to finish 8-3. Now you get optics involved. Back when you had just lost to Oklahoma, things were terrible. The optics were bad. Everyone was on board. Well, now probably going to be 8-3. And so you got a sizable portion, and I understand it perfectly well. You got a sizable portion of the fan base and then outsiders whose opinions shouldn't matter, but they often do, who are going to look and they're going to say, you can't fire a coach who's 8-3. Well, sure you can. You can if you don't feel like he's the right guy for your job. However, this is not just an apples-apples deal. Buyouts involved. So then we circle back to the question that we've been asking, and we're still asking it today, and I would imagine we'll be asking it at least through Saturday. Is there anyone else on any list that you've seen, or maybe a list we haven't seen that Chris Del Conte and company have seen, where a name exists that is a definitive upgrade over Tom Herman, so much so that you're willing to pay $25 million to buy him out and pay a new staff? Does that name exist? I can't tell you I've seen that name, but I will tell you this. I do think there may be names out there that we are not privy to, that haven't been put on any message board or put in any headline that could be in play. Because I'm a believer that the Texas job does have that kind of stroke in the coaching industry still. I think there's one more run that they're going to make. I don't know if we'll ever know about it. I do think there's one more run at least that they're going to make, because I think there's enough folks out there with enough money who have severed ties with Tom Herman, the idea of him being the coach, that they want to take another shot or two at someone else, not named Urban Meyer, before it's just accepted, hey, not ideal, but this is going to be our guy, for better or for worse, at least moving into 2021. Now that's Tom Herman. What about Gus Malzahn? I'm genuinely surprised at this. I'm close to Auburn, and I got to tell you, I am genuinely surprised at how much smoke there is around Gus Malzahn. As recently as a week ago, I mean, coming out of the Iron Bowl, I was hearing, and that's as bad as it gets. You get smoked by your arch rival. You would think things are going to be as bad as they can get out of that. And I was hearing it's not going to happen. This year, it's just not going to happen. Malzahn has as many detractors as he has. There are a lot of merits on his resume, too. You're not hearing about him right now because it's not advantageous to talk about him right now. But listen, regardless, he is in real trouble. And I want to make something clear. A lot of times when you're going to fire a coach, the automatic thing is, like we were talking about with Herman, the buyout. The buyout, is it worth it? Well, whether it's worth it, that we can address momentarily. Auburn's got the money. I've never indicated they don't have the money. I think some of you have misconstrued some of the things I've said on the show. No. It's not that they don't have the money. If you understand some of the names that are on various rooms and things around the Auburn campus, Rain and whatnot. Well, if you understand what kind of money the Rain name has, for example, they got lumber money at Auburn. Lumber money, people. They're not hurting to buy a coach out. It's whether it's prudent. That you don't become that rich by making very, very unwise financial moves, shall we say. So you may think, well, you got a 9, 10 figure net worth. It's just a drop in the bucket. It's not about that. It's about whether it's prudent to make the move. Now, if you talk to some folks around Auburn, they'll tell you money's been there. It's not that they're passing around the hat right now. It's been there. They wanted some of them to make a move on him a while back. You had a president that's no longer there, by the way, who may have stood in the way. Various BOT members have stood in the way. And whatever the case may be, there is some thinking down there that I personally haven't had conveyed to me. Doesn't mean anything really. But there is some thinking down there by some people in the know that there's been enough movement to make a move on Gus Malzahn. I am still in the camp, for the record, that I'd be surprised if this happened. I'd be surprised if Auburn fired Gus Malzahn. Not shocked anymore, but I'd be surprised. I keep asking for replacements. It's the game we always play. Just go round and round and round. It's your program. You have a right to be emotional about it because you invest in it financially and emotionally to the degree that you should respect. Is that Keith Niebuhr in the background? I think it was. You should respect a legitimate return on your investment. I get the passion. I appreciate it. I fully appreciate it. However, it is my opinion that you don't make a move like this to hire someone who could do as good as Malzahn or whoever your coach is. You make the move only if you have someone out there who is reasonable, is a legitimate candidate. Urban Meyer doesn't fit that description. Just let's note that. Is someone out there definitively better? If that person's out there, I'm on board with the move, to be honest with you. There's very few people who would benefit from a high-flying Auburn program than me, so I've got all the motivation in the world for it. I haven't seen that name that I think is realistic for them to get and would be a definitive upgrade. And some of the names you guys have thrown at me are either not realistic or are not nearly the definitive upgrade that some of you think they are. Here's his biggest, really, you got to be kind of closer to the Auburn program to pick up on this. One of his biggest issues, and it's a character thing. Not that he lacks character. I guess it's a personality thing. That's the word I should use. Malzahn doesn't have a ton of friends down there. Like, he doesn't have a ton of allies. He's kind of reclusive. He's kind of aloof, which is all well and good when you're winning. If you head down the road and go eat at Waffle House after wins, as long as you're winning, like, that's cool. But then when you're not, all of a sudden it's, go eat at your house, weirdo. What are you doing? Get out of here. College kids need this seat. And there's just a bunch of different things like that where Malzahn's not one, for better or for worse, to go around slapping backs and, working the speaking circuit. It's just not his scene. His scene is football. And if it's not football related, he's not really interested in it. I tell you, Nick Saban's got that mentality, but Saban is a master at working that scene. Like, Nick Saban works 380 days a year, I'm convinced. Guy's all over the place. I mean, he'll grind it out all day, and then he'll hop in the jet and go do a speaking engagement that night. And you'll never even know about it. He's all over the place. Not that he's ever been in trouble. He'll decide when he walks away from Alabama. But if Malzahn does that, just that, these are the kind of situations where if folks are on the fence, it probably buys you another year. He doesn't have that kind of equity built up, and he really never has. The only ally he has is the absurd contract that he and Jimmy Sexton backed Auburn into a corner and forced to sign in 2017 before the SEC title game. It was a brilliant move on their part. It was a desperation move on Auburn's part, and if you want to hate on that, I want you to remember what the situation was when that happened. It's not just in a vacuum. Always remember, that was when Tennessee, it seemed like, was burning to the ground. They'd gone through 47 different candidates and been told no, and eventually they settled on Jeremy Pruitt. But the powers that be at Auburn were looking at Malzahn having just beat number 1 Georgia and number 1 Alabama in consecutive, 3 weeks, 2 times in 3 weeks. Hadn't been done before. They're about to go to the SEC title game. He's totally rescued the program and the season from the depths of you-know-where. He wants an extension. We can't tell him no. How are we going to tell him no? And the other thing that snuck in the back door, this is agent season, and he's represented by the best. Arkansas came in the back door. And very conveniently, these rumors about Arkansas willing to back a Brinks truck right up to his back door and take him up to Fayetteville, those rumors were circulating. All that was happening the week of the SEC championship game. So before you talk about how stupid it was, you got to remember the factors. They were looking at Tennessee and saying, Tennessee can't even get a coach. We don't want to be in that situation. Plus, if we fire the guy that just beat number one twice in 3 weeks and he's headed the SEC title game and we won't renew him, so he walks, how attractive is our job going to be? They had no choice. They did what they had to do. And now you reap the consequences, I guess, of that. Because that's the ally that Gus Malzahn has. His contract right now has been one of his biggest allies.